Way to go, Tic Tac!
That's how you punch.
Wakanda forever!
You wouldn't have heard of me.
Let me put you on hold.
Dance off, bro! He's a friend from work!
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
What up, guys? It's Tom, and welcome back to another movie review. Today we are going over and ranking Little Giants. Little Giants, released in 1994, directed by Dwayne Dunham, misfits form their own team to face off against an elite Pee Wee football team, coached by the elite team's coach's brother. First off, that description is just a word sandwich. I don't know who wrote that on IMDb, but that needs to be rewritten, because holy moly. But either way, this movie I watched on the plane ride when I went on vacation, so I thought might as well do a review on it anyway, and it actually was pretty good, but it did have some problems as well, so let's just get right into the 10 essential aspects of a movie. The first essential aspect is plot. So I thought the plot of this movie was good. I liked how simple it was. It was just, they form a team, they try to defeat the other team, and that's really the plot. There was some deeper elements with family there, but nothing really that they screwed up, so I have to say the plot is one of the things they definitely did good with this movie. The second essential aspect is attraction. So there's parts of the attraction that were good and some that weren't as good. So the concept I thought was interesting. I like watching football. If someone watching this doesn't really know much about football or doesn't really understand it, they might not enjoy it as much. But for someone that does understand it, I found myself enjoying that part. I liked actually seeing them play football and see what kind of plays they do, and that was all entertaining to me. However, I feel like the comedy was a little bit lackluster. It was cringy at times. Now, I don't know if that's just because of the writing or if that's because it was children as actors. So whichever part it was that caused it, it just wasn't a very, very funny movie. It was supposed to be, but it wasn't overly funny. There were parts that I did find myself chuckling. Some were definitely written well, but for a lot of it, it felt like the kids were trying too hard to be funny. The third essential aspect is theme. The message that this movie had was, you never want to underestimate the underdog. If someone has more to fight for, then they're going to fight harder than someone that is already on the top of the pedestal. They don't have much more fighting to need to do. So you never want to really completely count out the underdog. So that's really what this whole movie's about. Whether it's older brother against younger brother, whether it's elite football team against a younger or against a worse football team, all those situations, you just never want to underestimate the person that has more to fight for. That's really the message. The fourth essential aspect is dialogue. Now, I don't have too much to say here. All of the adult actors, the dialogue was fine. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it also wasn't terrible. And the kids actors, actually, I feel like that was more realistic. Kids, the way that they talk to each other, it did feel more real when it came to this movie. So the children knew how to do dialogue decently well, but the adults could use a little bit more work, but that could just be part of the character. The fifth essential aspect is acting. Now, in this movie, it's kind of the same as when I talked about the dialogue and when I talked about the attraction. It's really just all the children actors just did what they could, but they weren't also given the perfect pieces to make this movie extravagant. So they all did okay. Same with the adult actors. There's one that I want to talk about in particular, which is Ed O'Neill, who played Kevin O'Shea. And he was the main big brother and the coach of the elite football team. And I mean, his character was played okay, but he did do a really good job of being cocky. He knew how to be this hated figure to the audience, maybe not to the town that they lived in because he was a hero, quote unquote, but to the audience, he was a very hated person. Just any way he talked to his little brother, you just didn't like it. You wanted his little brother to win in the end. You wanted to root against this coach, which was obviously the main purpose of this plot. So I think he did a good job of representing that kind of character. The sixth essential aspect is cinematography. Now, this is also something I feel like the movie did do well. They did a really good job of getting me emotionally connected to the underdog squad. I really wanted them to win in the end. I wanted them to beat the odds. I wanted the younger brother to take on his big brother and win at the end. So that, as emotionally connected to these characters, that they did well. When it came to how the movie looked, I mean, it looked like a 90s movie. There wasn't anything spectacular about it. But the actual connection to the characters is something they did do a good job with. The seventh essential aspect is editing. I think the editing was done well. They did a good job of really introducing these two main characters at the beginning of the movie in kind of a short background scene, and it gave you enough information to know who they are and what they've done once it comes to them fast forwarding up to when they're adults and they're actually coaching these teams. So I think that kind of editing always works well in movies if it's done correctly, because it gives you enough character development without wasting a lot of time. And of course, since this movie is an hour and 47 minutes, they kept it short, which is really, really good because comedies, no matter if they're a good comedy or bad comedy, they can't be over 2 hours. There's just not enough story here for it to be pushed that long. So I'm glad they kept it to that 1 hour 47 mark. They could have even shortened it a little bit. It would have been fine by me, cut out some unnecessary scenes. But overall, they did a good job with that beginning part of editing. The rest, I mean, it was fine. Nothing incredible, but didn't suck. The eighth essential aspect is soundtrack. I do not remember if this movie had a soundtrack. It probably did, but clearly not memorable enough. The ninth essential aspect is directing. So I feel like it's the director's job to take these previous 8 essential aspects, put them together to make a movie that's worth watching. And the director of this movie is Dwayne Dunham, and he's previously directed one movie, and that is Homeward Bound: The Incredible Journey. I personally have never seen it. I don't know if it would apply to this movie or if it's good or bad. I don't know anything about that. But I know that this movie was very middle of the road. It has a lot of stuff it can work on, but it does a few things right. So based off that, I'm assuming the other one is also kind of middle of the road. But yeah, this one is very mediocre. And the 10th essential aspect is time. So this movie, I feel like still has stood the test of time. It's still a movie that I've known, I've heard about it many times, and it is 31 years old. So it has stood the test of time. Now, me personally, I would rewatch this. It was a good movie to watch. It's just, obviously, I've noticed a lot of problems with it, but it's still a watchable movie. It's not like everything that they did wrong ruins the movie and it's unwatchable. That's not true at all. This is definitely a movie I could see myself rewatching. It's a nice one just to sit down and just enjoy in general, see the nice emotional value that these characters have, laugh at the comedy that is not overly cringy. And it's just something that definitely should stand the test of time, especially for 31 years now. It's a really good movie, especially if you like football. So stood the test of time, even though it has some issues. Now, onto the reviews. So, Rotten Tomatoes critics gave it a 50%, Rotten Tomatoes audience gave it a 63%, and IMDb gave it a 64%. Now, I personally agree that it does deserve to be middle of the road, but I wouldn't say quite to the level of 50%. I think in the 60s is a pretty good range. So, Rotten Tomatoes critics, I'm not agreeing with. Sure, I'll put it somewhere with this Rotten Tomatoes audience and IMDb personally. Anywhere from like a 60 to a 65 would make sense. Maybe high 50s would also make sense, but anywhere in that general range is where I would put it. And finally, the rankings. So, in 1994, it's going to be first. It's the only movie I've reviewed thus far, so until I get more, it will stay in that first position. In the 1990s, it's going to be sixth, above Steel and below Rush Hour. Now, Steel has way more problems than this movie has. It is a hard watch. The comedy makes it even worse to watch. This one, however, has these savable elements that make the movie actually enjoyable. So that wasn't even a hard decision. This movie is definitely better than Steel. And it's below Rush Hour because that movie does a lot more things right. I feel like all the comedy is good in that one, while this one has some lackluster. The story is interesting. The characters have great development and you are connected to them emotionally, especially towards the end. So I have to say Rush Hour is just an overall better movie and Steel is an overall worse movie. And in all time, it's going to be 49th, above The Union and below X-Men. Now, again, above The Union, both have problems with the movies. Both have probably a similar amount, but they are in different categories. I feel like just Little Giants is still just a more enjoyable watch. As cool as the concept is in The Union, and as good as the acting is for a part, I just feel like Little Giants is something that more people can just sit down and watch casually. Now, The Union, if you really nitpick it, might even be the better made movie. I just personally feel like I would much rather have Little Giants on my shelf than The Union. And it's below X-Men because that movie has done way, way, way more to make it actually a better movie. They have great character development, great acting, a very interesting story. Obviously, it's based off of the comics. It's the first time the X-Men were on the big screen, so they had a lot to live up to. So, of course, that's going to be the better movie. I just personally believe that universe is a lot more interesting than Little Giants, and X-Men I've watched plenty of times, and I can't say the same about Little Giants, obviously. And overall, just the look of the movie is more interesting, probably because it is slightly younger, but nonetheless, I just think it's a better overall movie. That's all I have for Little Giants. If you guys enjoyed this review, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and make sure to comment what movie you want me to review next. I've officially finished all of the requested videos, so I have no more that have been requested to me by audience members. So for now, I'm just going to be picking and choosing the movies that I want to do. But if you want to see me do a specific one, please comment it because it will be the first on the list. It will be the next movie I do. But other than that, I hope you guys have an amazing night. Peace out.